Hi, everyone. Your godmother's here. I have an exciting event for you tonight. We're reading from Chambered, which was released last Thursday. Um, what I'd like to do is read for you. We've gotten some really good reviews already from it. You're like, well, how? Because if it was just out last Thursday, but trust me, trust me. I want to read a review, like a little snippet of a review, because I think it really sums it up nicely. The reviewer said, Chambered is 6 stories about the quote unquote life of a gun with lots of bodies attached to it. It's a genie in a bottle that shows up where it needs to be when it needs to be there. This loose biography, meaning biography of the gun, is told from 6 distinctly unique voices, each one a different bullet in the cylinder, and all of them fire true. Not a dud in the bunch. So I'm not sharing that just to like humble brag about it, but also to be like, what's really great is he really summed up what it is. It is about a gun that travels through 6 different novellas. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the comment box um, the link to the Amazon so you can order the book if you would like. Now, what I would like to do is get us started off. I'm going to bring to the stage, and then I'm going to also introduce him, uh, our fearless editor and publisher, and really the mastermind behind the book. We have Woodford Lee Jones. Please allow me to introduce him. Woodford Lee Jones is a horror thriller writer who loves coffee, a good book, and a great story. His love for horror grew from watching movies in the late 70s, early 80s. However, it was only in his 20s that he started reading horror. He enjoys art, drawing, painting, watching live theater and movies, traveling, reading, book cover design and book formatting, and supporting his fellow writers, as I've learned. Nightly and on the weekends, he can be found with a hot cup of coffee, studiously banging out that next chilling tale. He always strives to keep it dark, disturbing, and a little bit creepy. Welcome to his darkness. He lives in Greenville, South Carolina with his wife, Lori. He is working on his 5th and 6th solo books, a collection of stories titled Fatal Potions, and a psychological thriller novel, Becoming Allie Winter. He is also teaming up with a multi-genre author, D.A. Schneider, you'll meet him later, writing a horror beach survival novel, Horror on Vacation, as well as adding an offering to a Halloween novella anthology, All Hallows Feast, hopefully coming out this October 2026, just in time for Halloween. Stay tuned. There is much more darkness coming down the pike. Consider signing up for his monthly newsletter. It comes out the 3rd of every month, and a free flash fiction story comes out on the 18th of each month. This is a gift for his subscriber. So I'm going to put the link in the chat for you to find out more about him, but I am going to leave the stage, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Woodford. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Elaine. Appreciate it. I am going to be reading from chapter 4 of my story, Behind the Glass, and I just wanted to give everybody a little prologue of leading up to this. My main character, Jill Danforth, has witnessed her husband talking in his sleep and making motions that he has murdered somebody. And through some soul searching, she decides to follow him to get some answers to these questions. So I'm picking up in the middle of chapter 4 to the end of chapter 4. She was just stepping out of the house when a still small voice that argued with her from time to time talked directly to her. Don't you think you need to consider taking some kind of protection with you in case things get hairy? She paused, thinking of this suggestion and that phrase, in case things get hairy. That was a phrase Craig often used. I guess I should. Damn right you should. She glanced out the door toward the front again. No one was out there in the driveway. She stepped back in and closed the door and moved into the living room and surveyed it. pulling up a mental map of where Craig hid his guns. Craig Danforth didn't keep his guns in a gun safe in his closet or somewhere away from the main living areas. He always hid his guns in plain sight. Well, not exactly plain sight, but close enough to get your hands on it in case there was ever a home invasion. It was something Craig always feared, and he said he always wanted to protect his family. His whole thought process wasn't out of the realm of possibility, but the way he approached it with the solution was humorous to her. She never let on how silly she thought it was. Craig always seemed serious that it could happen one day. She knew the shotgun attached to the underside of the couch was out of the realm of, was out of question for her protection. She didn't need that much firepower. She had always felt a shotgun was crazy overkill anyway, and it was almost laughable that he had gone to so much trouble. She could go for the Glock that was underneath the coffee table. The way the coffee table was made, with the raised shelf that was 8 to 9 inches off the ground, it concealed the Glock that was hidden beneath nicely. Whoever sat in front of the center of the table would have time to lean forward, pull the gun from the holster attached to the bottommost shelf, and come up firing. The threat that was there would no longer be a threat. Jill could get the 9mm that was in the pocket of the recliner Craig always sat in. If a home invasion ever happened, they would have to make sure that one of them sat in the recliner if forced to be seated in the living room. When the invaders were distracted, all anyone would have to do was snake a hand down inside the pocket of the recliner, extract the 9mm hidden there, and unload on said invader, and that would be all he or she wrote. There were others throughout the house. Jill didn't need to mentally go through the whole list. She put them all out of her head except for the one that she thought was beautiful and special to her. She moved to the entertainment center and pulled a decorative box from the chest-high shelf. She knelt beside the coffee table and placed the box in front of her with reverence. It's the way she always approached guns, with a huge amount of respect. Flipping the latch, she opened the box and let the lid touch down, leaving the revolver fully exposed. She took a moment just to stare at it and take it in. It was a Smith & Wesson, Model 66, snub-nosed revolver with a 2.5-inch barrel. It was polished steel with thick wooden hand grips. She liked this gun. It had a presence, but not like Clint Eastwood hand cannon. Enough to be a hard threat in her mind, but not so powerful that she wouldn't be able to control its kick should she need to pull the trigger. She knew how to control it. She had shot it many times at the gun range whenever they went. She wasn't afraid of this revolver or any of Craig's handguns. Before Haley disappeared, she, Craig, and even Haley had gone to the range quite often, and that being scared of guns feeling had long since disappeared from them all. Jill knew her way around guns. She flipped the lock, snapped it to the side, and let the cylinder fall open. She saw it was fully loaded. All the guns in the house were loaded as a precaution. She jerked her wrist to the right. It snapped shut, and she shoved it into the front pocket of her backpack. She pulled the 2 boxes of bullets and added them to the same pocket, but they were placed in a smaller compartment within so they would be out of the way. Closing the lid and fastening it again, she returned the box to the exact place on the shelf where she had taken it. Jill turned, grabbed her backpack and jacket. Turning again, her eyes landed on the end table closest to the windows that looked out on the wooded backyard. A pair of binoculars stood on end. Backtracking, Jill snagged them quickly. Could be useful in spying on Craig, she thought, and stuffed them into her backpack, then moved to the side door again and locked it as she left. As she reached her car and sliding into the seat, a memory from a few days ago surfaced in her mind. It was of Craig sitting at the kitchen table, cleaning the very revolver she now had in her backpack. Another flash memory. Craig's hand rising in the darkness, and then a flinch of his hand like real recoil had moved it as though he had taken someone's life in a dream. Was the revolver I took part of an earlier crime? The thought stopped her cold, and she looked over the steering wheel back at the house she called home. It will be a question I ask him when this inevitable confrontation happens. Jill and the house suddenly didn't feel safe anymore.
We want more. What a cliffhanger. That was exciting. Thank you so much, Woodford.
Yeah, thank you, Elaine.
This is where I show my great power. I'm going to kick you off the stage.
See you guys. Thanks so much for listening.
You'll be back later. He will come back later. And I want to introduce our next author. D.A. Schneider is an author of horror and mystery who lives in Indianapolis, Indiana. After trying for some time to break into the comic book industry with his artwork, D.A. decided to focus on writing instead. A former NFL and entertainment columnist, D.A.'s most recent books include The Cozy Murder Mystery, Death of a Scholar. This is the Holly Reynolds Mystery Book 1. A modern-day Agatha Christie-esque murder mystery, Opulence and Misery. And the horror crime novel, Salvation. D.A. signed with KGAH Publishing in May 2017, Editingle Indie House in 2022, and Distinguished Skeleton Press in 2025. He co-founded Po Boy Publishing in 2020. So I am going to excuse myself from the stage, and D.A., go ahead and start.
Reading from chapter 5 of my story, Mr. Vengeance. It was a Wednesday night, and Leo was well aware of the St. Mary's evening services every week. He had a few minutes to kill and stopped for a slice and a cold beer. Of all the things he missed about the real world while he was in the joint, these two were near the top. By the time he parked just down the street from the church and walked the rest of the block to the entrance, the pews were nearly full and the organ music was playing. Leo took a seat near the back and waited for the show to begin. The crowd applauded as Leo's old friend, Bruce Kaplan, took the stage. Kaplan looked just the same as Leo remembered. He was a black man with skin the color of coffee, heavy on the cream. His bald head gleamed under the light fixtures, and as he approached the pulpit, he flashed that old charming smile that he once said would make a nun's panties drop. Leo wondered if he'd put that to the test now that he wore the collar of a priest. Leo thought old Kaplan must be doing something right. In all his years of being dragged to church by his mother, Leo had never seen such a lively congregation. They clapped and cheered until Kaplan motioned for them to calm down. Once they had fallen silent, he began his sermon in earnest. By the end, Leo had to admit that Kaplan was at the top of his game. If he didn't know better, he'd have even been convinced that the old con man had gone straight and actually believed the shit he was shoveling. As the sermon came to a close, a young man appeared at the front of the aisle. He was dressed in his Sunday best, but Leo recognized muscle when it was presented to him, J.C. Penney suit notwithstanding. Mr. Albert is now going to come around with the collection plates, Kaplan called to the congregation. As you all pass it around, remember that we are in the process of getting approval for the renovation of the church's historical pilasters, and anything you can give would go a long way. God bless you all. With that, Kaplan closed his book and stepped down among the pews for small talk with members of the church. Leo sat patiently as others placed their contributions into the collection plates and moved toward the exit. One of the plates was handed to Leo, who shrugged and deftly plucked 2 20s from the top, then slipped them into his pocket without notice. He passed it on and continued to sit while the church emptied. It was good to know his skills were as sharp as ever, even after all those years in lockup. Eventually, even Mr. Albert disappeared into the back rooms with the collection plates, leaving Leo and Kaplan alone. Leo stood and moved down the center aisle as his old friend gathered his notes from the pulpit and closed them in his Bible. When he looked up, he did a double take, and his eyes widened, not in fear, but in delight. "Leo!" he called. He quickly clambered down from the dais and embraced the ex-convict. "Praise the Lord." He gave Leo several hearty pats on his back, while Leo kept his arms awkwardly at his side, before finally releasing him. "I had no idea you were out. How are you?" "I need your help," Leo said. "Well, you've come to the right place," said Kaplan. "I have been saved from my former life, and I like to think you set me on that path. It was your unselfish act that taught me to embrace Jesus as my Lord and Savior. Now here I am, helping people to find that same love in their lives." "No," Leo said. "Cap, I need to find my wife. Do you have any idea what happened to Rita?" Kaplan's smile slowly faded, and he averted his eyes. "Yeah, I heard about her disappearance. Leo, why don't you come back to my office? We can discuss things in a more private setting." Leo nodded and followed Father Kaplan through the door off to the right side of the stage. The office walls were lined with bookcases of rich oak. Kaplan moved to a large desk of matching wood. "Would you like a drink? I have Irish whiskey." "No sacramental wine?" Leo asked. Kaplan chuckled at this. "No, only the good stuff for you." He poured 2 fingers worth into a glass and handed it over. Leo took the glass but didn't drink. "I gotta say, it's damn good to see you, Leo. I really hope you'll take me up on my offer. With God in your life, all things are possible." Leo cocked his head to the side and smirked to let his old friend know he wasn't fooling anybody. Kaplan finally laughed and broke character. "Man, you know this is the best con game on the fucking planet. These motherfuckers can't wait to give me their money. I don't even know what a damn pilaster is." His laughter had grown nearly hysterical. "Best part is, it's all legal, man. I got the idea after I saw a news story about these TV evangelists who spent church money on private jets and shit. That's a whole nother level right there. I'm a pretty damn good grifter, but these guys are fucking masters." "Cap," Leo said, forcing a little more urgency in his voice, "we were going to talk about Rita." And that's the end of my chapter.
Wonderful. And before I kick you off stage, there was a request or a question about whether you have any links to your artwork. If you do, could you please put them in the comments box? You don't think you have? Do you have any? Maybe no. If you do, please. Okay, please try to put them in the comment box if you do. And we will bring you back out later, and people can certainly continue to ask about art if they are interested in that. Thank you again. That was such a wonderful reading. I'm going to add our next author to the stage and introduce her. NJ Gallegos is an emergency medicine physician by day, horror author by night. Medical maladies, haunted hospitals, and the impending zombie apocalypse dominate her oh so delectable brain. When not wielding a scalpel or pen, she binges reality TV, anything Bravo and Survivor, homebrews IPAs, and co-hosts the Scream Kings podcast. She resides in Tornado Alley with her wife and 2 cats, Catbane and Wally. She has been nominated for 2 Pushcart Prizes. Her novella, Just Desserts, won an American Legacy Book Award in the psychological horror category in 2024. In 2022 and 2025, she won first place in Alien Buddha Press's Horror Showdown. With Winding Road Stories, she's published 2 novels, The Broken Heart and The Fatal Mind. In 2026, she released Eat Your Heart Out with Black Hair Press and Time of Death, a collection of medical horror with WRDS. She's taken part in multiple anthologies and projects, with more on the horizon. And I am going to put some of her links in the chat while she's reading. NJ, go ahead whenever you're ready.
From Backbone and a little prologue to this. My character, Sam, wakes up in an ICU and discovers she is now confined to a wheelchair due to a near fatal spinal injury. So she's struggling with depression. She's toiling in rehab with her annoying yet charming roommate, Bex, and she finds a reason to live when she discovers the man who put her in the chair is alive. Now, how is she going to exact her revenge on Jacob Brady? Let's find out. So this is from chapter 12. I obsessively checked my phone during the Uber ride. No texts. Bex made it home okay per her shared location. You can drop me off here, I told Sergey. 3 houses down from ours. Our neighbor's topiary would obscure any view of me. Of course. Moving with lion-like grace, he fetched my wheelchair, popped it open, and then grabbed my door. Here you go. Repeating my prior movements, I transferred myself lickety-split to the chair. Thanks. Need any more help? Sergey asked. I shook my head. Good from here, thank you. Sergey cocked his head and shot me a finger gun. Stay cool out there, yes? Same to you. Languidly, I rolled down the sidewalk to our place and as stealthily as possible, made my way up the ramp. Pushing open the front door silently, we WD-40'd the hinges and applied a piece of duct tape in a ridiculous hot pink color over the latch earlier that morning, readying everything. I'd also wrapped some of the pink duct tape around the crack handle of the gun, right above the engraving, making it look like a Lisa Frank production. I couldn't obscure for Haley, someone who meant something to my savior. But the last thing I needed was for the damn thing to fall apart before I blew Jacob Brady's brains out. That would totally harsh my mellow. Cruising down the hallway, I held my breath. My wheels weren't totally soundless, but the music drifting from the sitting room covered their tread. Before reaching the entrance, I snaked my hand inside my bag and gripped the duct tape handle. I let out a shaky exhalation, hoping against all hope our ruse worked, that he wouldn't wonder why there was a tarp spread out on the floor. For painting, Bex would explain. I hate this wall color, don't you? That she was able to maneuver him as planned, seated on the couch with his back to me, his luscious locks a perfect target. All I had to do was pull the trigger. Easy peasy. Here goes nothing. I breached the entrance, holding the gun like the internet told me. Index finger perched on the trigger. No pressure. Not yet. For Haley scratching into the palm of my left hand, reassuring, spurring me on, saying, do it, and applying front to rear pressure with my shooting hand. I froze. Hello there. Jacob's words dripped with pomposity. Bex sat stock still next to him, careful not to make any sudden movements, lest the knife he held at her throat move and end her. To her credit, she looked more pissed off than scared. Not me. Terror held me firmly. He grinned and tapped his head. I knew you seemed familiar, although now you look like a mega dyke. I liked your hair longer better. Hot venom burbled up my throat. Let her go, you prick. The gun shook in my hands. I think not. In fact, I think I'll have a little fun with her first. Make you watch. I'll fuck every hole she's got, including that bonus hole in her belly. They call that a Philly sidecar, in case you didn't know. And that'd be a new one, even for me. He let out an evil chuckle. His lips drew up in a sickening leer. Then, I'll take this knife and carve her up like a Thanksgiving turkey while you watch. How about that? Silent, stoic tears stood in Beck's eyes, and she mouthed, do it. Primordial dread threatened to overwhelm me. My mind flitted frantically, uselessly. Rationality bled away. Holding the knife still and steady with his right hand, Jacob Brady gestured broadly with his left. And seriously? The tarps? He pitched his voice high. We're painting. You don't think I recognize a kill room when I see it? I own Dexter on DVD, for fuck's sakes. Beck's chin quivered and her lip trembled. Watery snot snaked from her nose. Her pallid face was soaked with sweat and silent tears. If he fucking hurt her. An intense heat lit my heart aflame, ratcheting up my pulse, sending metastasis of indignant anger elsewhere. My cheeks, ears, my neck broiled, jaw clenched, and my grip tightened on the pink taped handle. Every cell within me vibrated and tingled, making me comfortably numb and oddly calm. Monkey mind completely stilled. Bex mouthed, shoot him. Don't you fucking touch her, I said evenly. My stomach skipped, quieted. Or what? He taunted in a mocking tone. Then the cripple will shoot me? Please. You don't have the guts. You barely had the guts to run away from me when you did. Now what are you going to do? Tick tock, tick tock. His face softened into a dreamy expression and he tisked, tipping his head towards me. Let's have ourselves one dandy last time together, babe. I'll tenderize this slut right here nice and pretty. Butcher her. Prepare a tartare from her meat. Force feed you your little girlfriend. Make you really taste her. He shut his eyes derisively and snorted. Perfect timing. With eerie tranquility, I slowly released the breath I'd been holding. My hands steadied, and the world slowed to a crawl. For Bex, for Haley, and for me. I aimed, pulled the trigger. Thunder roared in my ears. Blood. So much blood. And that is me.
Thank you. People are enjoying your humor in the chat box, the comment box. So feel free to go in there and respond to those. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful reading. I'm going to invite our next author to the stage. Marie-Celine Matter has human teeth and human fingernails just like you. She currently works as a cryptozoologist in Centralia, Pennsylvania, where she was born and raised. While she's been writing fiction her whole life, Taken for a Ride is the first story she's ever published. She already has many more ideas in the works, though, with intent to establish herself as a cosmic and sci-fi horror writer. She thanks you for tuning in today and hopes you enjoy. So, Marie, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining today. I'm super excited about this. So I have a little context I want to read first and foremost. So this story follows Claire Templeton, the character secretly carrying the revolver and the trophy wife of Shady Entertainment CEO Marcus Templeton. Up to this point, they've been touring the abandoned grounds of the theme park Dreamscape to see if it's a worthwhile investment to renovate. With them are executive assistant Jack, PR director Janet, the cruel CFO Susan, the cruel CFO Susan, her silent husband Stuart, and their troubled teenage daughter Audrey. As the tour has gone on, two things have become clear. Renovations by Marcus's company Radiant Realms have always been cheap and fatally dangerous, and something is increasingly off about their tour guide, Caitlin. At the end of the tour, Susan humiliates herself by tripping and falling. She punishes the meek Stuart for laughing at her by punching their daughter Audrey in the eye. Claire is held back from intervening by Marcus. With no one else in the group willing to address what has just happened, the deal for the park is in its final stages. So I will be reading from the very end, or toward the very end of part 1 of 3. Excuse me. So, are you ready to sign? Caitlin asked. Marcus hesitated, putting a hand to his round chin. I'm going to take a walk and clear my head. I'll have an answer for you once I get back. The trio disbanded. Marcus headed down a side road of Whimsy Dream Square, following a path through a cluster of trees. Claire hesitated, shifted her purse on her shoulder, then quietly began to follow him. Excuse me. She tailed Marcus up a gentle hill through the trees, hanging back to avoid making a sound. Her sheath dress prevented her from crouching stealthily, but she was still keeping up with him. Her heart began to beat faster. She felt the jostling weight of the revolver heavy on her shoulder. This was the best chance she would get. They emerged on a hill of dead grass and tangled weeds, able to see all of the Garden of Potential from that view. It was the only place she'd seen in the park with no televisions or cameras. Marcus would call the rotten decay before them an opportunity. Right now, Claire just saw a desiccated, eviscerated corpse that he kept insisting was still alive. Marcus paused at the peak of the hill. Claire inched the zipper of her purse open, adrenaline coursing through her as her fingers brushed the cold steel of the gun inside. She slowly pulled the gun into view, holding it out in front of her, toward Marcus. Handle first. Claire took a shaky breath, steadied herself, and called, Marcus? Marcus turned around and looked with surprise at the revolver Claire was offering him. She extended the handle to him, pointing the barrel at herself in the process. What the? Don't hold it like that, Marcus chastised her, moving forward and snatching the gun out of her hands. Jesus, Claire, what is this? A gift, Claire stammered. It's a gun for your collection. I know you said you like pieces with history, so... Marcus held the firearm up for inspection. It was a silver-framed, 6-chambered Smith & Wesson with a splintered wood handle held together on the right side by pink tape. Most perplexingly of all, the words "for Haley" had been carved into the left side of the handle. Where did you find this? Marcus asked. Yesterday, when I was on a walk in the rain around the Airbnb's neighborhood, Claire said. She began to wring her fingers together. It was in a housing development of all places. The rain came back out of nowhere, and I ducked into one of the unfinished condos to wait it out. Of course, it wasn't much better inside with all the mud, but it must have been serendipity since I found this. You're giving me a random gun that you found in a housing development as a gift? Marcus asked. You know I collect antiques, right? You said you collect things with a story, Claire said, somewhat defensively. Remember? And when I found this revolver, all I could think was, who's Haley? How did the handle get cracked? Who taped it up? I thought maybe we could try to figure it out together or come up with our own story of how it got there. Marcus held the revolver by the thumb and forefinger. Claire, I have a genuine Civil War musket. I have the rifle that killed one of the last white rhinos. That is history. This is junk. I'm surprised it's not an evidence lockup. Claire felt a sickly bolt of adrenaline seize her guts. She was losing him. Time to go for broke. I'm sorry. I just want to do something nice because I feel like you've been distant lately. I know you've been busy with work, but I miss you. I miss us. I was hoping we could talk about it. It's really been affecting me. Is that okay? Marcus smiled at her sadly. I don't know why I expected any different. What do you mean? It is just like you to turn this around when that's exactly what you've been doing to me. It's a phenomenon called projection. Do you know what that word means? It's a form of gaslighting. It's abuse, Claire. You've hardly looked at me, let alone touched me for 3 months, but I'm abandoning you? He gestured to the gun. And even if I was being distant, this is what you would get to win me back? But abuse? Oh God, have I been ignoring you? Claire asked, her stomach prickling. I just meant, I'm sorry. I didn't know I was hurting you that way. I would never want to do that to you. Marcus's face didn't change, so she added, and I'm sorry for the Epcot thing. That was stupid. And I'm sorry for trying to confront Susan about Audrey. I know it's really important that you guys have a good relationship. What do you mean by that? Marcus asked shrewdly. I just mean I understand that it's important that you and Susan stay on good terms, even in light of what happened. You're bringing that up again? Marcus demanded scornfully. Claire, it was one time, just one time since we put the previous times behind us. Just once. It was 3 fucking months ago. It's in the past. Stuart forgave Susan. You're the only one who still has a problem with it. That's not what I was talking about, Claire said feebly. She felt tears well in her eyes. I'm sorry. I was talking about what just happened with Audrey, not. I don't understand. I'm just trying to give you a gift. I don't want to start a fight. Marcus shoved the revolver back into Claire's hands. I'm trying, Claire. I really am. But things like this aren't making it any easier. You tell me I'm abandoning you as you abandon me, then you beat me over the head with my mistakes as you give me this crap? Is this all that my collection is worth to you? It's like you don't know me at all. I'm sorry, Claire said softly. Marcus stormed away back toward the main square. Wait, babe, please, Claire called after him. Come back. I'm sorry. Marcus disappeared out of sight. Claire slumped onto a rusted park bench. What just happened? She muttered, tucking the gun back into her purse. You tried to call him out on his behavior, so he turned it on you instead of owning up, said a young voice emerging out of the bushes behind her. Audrey appeared with a couple of twigs and leaves nestled in her golden hair. Her eye socket was bright red. It's a phenomenon called projection. It's a form of gaslighting. It's abuse. Oh, hey, Claire said. What were you doing back there, kiddo? Saw a baby rabbit. Wanted to keep it. Ah, I guess that would have been a hair-raising experience. Claire stared at the girl, perplexed. Why do you let him talk to you like that? Audrey sat on the bench beside Claire. Claire hesitated. Like what? She finally replied. You don't know. He's probably right. I probably have been neglecting him. I mean, who would just throw the word abuse around like that if there wasn't a good reason? You just tried to tell him he's neglecting you, Audrey pointed out. Maybe he's neglecting me because I'm neglecting him, Claire offered. Jesus, you're cooked, Audrey scoffed. But you know, you're still lucky. I can read all the psychology books I want, but I'm stuck with Susan for the next couple years. But you can leave Marcus whenever you want. It's not that simple, Claire said quietly. And I don't want to leave him. I love him. I was nothing before him. Audrey squinted. You were a waiter, right? Some bougie restaurant, going through school? Claire nodded. Community college, yeah. That's not nothing. Claire shrugged and shook her head, but didn't argue further. Her eyes were drawn inevitably to Audrey's developing bruise. Are you okay? She asked. The question felt larger than what the words conveyed. I've never seen anything like that before. Susan was. So your husband doinked my mom? Audrey interrupted. Claire sighed. I'm not going to talk about that with you. I'm sorry you overheard that. I knew it. That's why she's so warm and friendly with Marcus. Audrey chuckled. That's hilarious. Is it? Claire said testily. Everything Susan does is hilarious. Audrey flashed Claire an uncanny smile, amplified by her bloody sclera. It has to be. She began to walk back toward the square, kicking her legs out in front of her as she moved as though traversing an invisible balance beam. Claire sighed deeply, mustered up her best public-facing smile, and followed. They returned to see Caitlin standing with Marcus and Susan, holding a clipboard with the Dreamscape logo on it. What's the latest? Are we doing it? Claire asked, craning her head next to see the papers. We're doing it, Marcus smiled, raising a fist in victory. I've got the papers right here, Caitlin said, handing them off to Marcus. They're identical to the ones your lawyer approved. Once you sign here, Radiant Realms will be the official owner of Dreamscape. Marcus took the clipboard, pulling a pen from his pocket. I feel really good about this one, Caitlin, he said grandly. We'll get this place up and running in no time. With a dramatic flourish, he signed Marcus Templeton at the bottom of the sheet. Caitlin's strained smile dropped at last as she took the clipboard back, revealing the expression of pure contempt that had always been just underneath. You really don't remember me, do you? She asked coldly. What? Marcus uttered. Caitlin tapped her Bluetooth earpiece twice and said in a shaky, low voice, Yeah, they signed. Do it. Before anyone had time to speak, an ear-shattering boom tore through the park. And that's what I have.
Thank you so much for reading that. You gotten a lot of positive comments in the comment box, so go ahead and read those. I'm going to remove you now, Marie. We're almost there, guys. Thank you for hanging with us for so long. I'm going to introduce our penultimate, our second to last author, and that is Evan Bond. Evan Bond is a thriller, suspense, and horror author who loves blending his love of the outdoors with his writing. He is the author of several titles, including his best-selling psychological thriller, Echoes of the Past, and his latest collection of horror shorts, Charred Remains. Evan, go ahead and begin whenever you're ready.
Will do. Thank you so much. So I want to give a little bit of prologue to mine as well. So I'm starting shortly after mine follows a character. Her name is Ada Hunter, and she is in a cat and mouse game in the woods, deep in the woods, with a serial killer. So my story here starts shortly after she has been captured, kidnapped, and cornered. And we'll go here. A dark figure pulled into view, standing over her and blocking out the light from the moonlight streaming through the trees. She couldn't see the man's face, but she didn't need to. It was the same man she had rear-ended on the road. No doubt about it. He was now wearing a black hoodie and gloves with duct tape around the wrists. Something large glinted in his right hand, and Ada's eyes grew wide with fear. Suddenly, her ability to scream flooded back, and she let out an ear-piercing cry for help. The man standing over her laughed and began to scream as loud as he could alongside her. Yes, please, come help, he yelled. Hurry! Their voices echoed in unison through the trees until they drifted away on the wind. There's no help coming, Ada, he said as he held up a plastic card in his left hand. With her vision finally returned, she could see it was her license. There's no escape and no help out here, Ada. Scream all you want. I encourage it, actually. With that, he let out another yell filled with primal rage. Ada's skin began to crawl. I'm sorry I rear-ended you, Ada muttered. I'll pay for the damages, just please. She let her words trail off, unable to finish the sentence. The man let out a laugh and crouched lower, looming over her. I'm not mad about the car. A little paint and she'll be as good as new. Bumper is reinforced anyway, so shouldn't even be much more than a scratch. She's been through this before. Despite the hot, humid air of summer, Ada felt a winter storm roar up in her veins as it traveled all throughout her body. This was clearly not the first time this deranged man had done this. Ada tried to slide her body backward through the dirt to escape the stare of the wild man standing over her. He stood, shook his head, and pressed his boot against her pelvis. She felt intense pressure and feared the bone would crack. And just where do you think you're going? The man said, looking around. In case you hadn't noticed, there isn't much out here. She knew pleading with the man would do her no good. He seemed to want nothing other than the satisfaction of hurting her. Crying and begging would only make things worse for her. Control over his helpless victim. Despite her utter fear, she refused to give it to him. He stared at her for a moment as if waiting for the tears and begging to start. A quiet one, huh? The others always begged, screamed, and cried at this point. You are a fascinating one, I'll give you that. Without warning, the man released his foot and bent down in one swooping motion, picking up Ada by her collar. He flung her into the air with ease, pressing her firmly up against the bark of a tree. One hand gripped around her throat while the other held her by the wrist. Her chest ached and burned for the want of air as her windpipe closed. In desperation, her free arm shot up and flailed around like an injured snake before it finally found its fangs and slashed across her attacker's face. He let out a cry, losing his grip as he stepped back and pressed his hand against his left eye. Ada fell to the ground, gasping for air. "You little bitch!" the man screamed as he pulled his hand free and checked for blood. There was only a trickle, but Ada was proud. "Fuck you," she panted. This only served to enrage her attacker, who delivered a kick to her stomach, sending Ada rolling through the dirt and landing face up. An intense pain stung in her abdomen, but quickly dulled as her adrenaline began to flow. "You're gonna beg before the end, I promise you that," the man stepped forward, straddling Ada before dropping on top of her. The most intense fear Ada had ever felt in her life erupted up and down every nerve ending in her body. There was no knowing what this man would do next. Would he continue to assault her? Would it turn sexual? Was he planning to end her life now? These thoughts all flashed through her mind in an instant, nearly overwhelming her. She felt like she would black out and vomit simultaneously. Seething anger burned in his eyes as his hands rose towards her throat. He wrapped his fingers around her neck, squeezing as tightly as he could. Ada's hands lashed out, desperately trying to claw and gouge any sensitive area she could reach, but to no avail. He was able to keep his face just out of her reach. Now, with her vision blurring and lungs burning, her hands probed the forest floor. Her nails dug into the soft earth, clawing and reaching for anything she could use to defend herself. Drool hung from his bottom lip as he squeezed her throat. His own eyes bulged and his skin turned bright red from anger and exertion. Despite the gut-wrenching fear for of her Despite the gut-wrenching fear of her life ending at that very moment, a strange thought flooded through her mind. Not giving in and showing fear seemed to have only made him angrier. She wished she had cried and screamed and fought back more to buy herself some time. As her world began to darken, Ada's hands stretched out, combing the dirt around her for anything she could use in one final attempt to save her life. If she didn't find a way to break free from this man, she would be dead in a matter of seconds. Her left hand probed through the ground and found nothing but a fistful of dirt. The fingers on her right hand dug into the earth, looking for anything hard. She would even take a fallen branch, anything she could use. Her lungs ached for air as her vision began to fade. Desperately, she tried to inhale, but no air could enter. Right before she felt as though she would pass out, her fingers wrapped around something hard buried in the dirt. Without a second thought, she clawed the object free and swung it as hard as she could. It connected with the side of the man's head with a loud crack, and he toppled over on the ground, groaning. Air rushed into her lungs all at once, causing her to gasp for air, coughing as she attempted to stand. The rock she had clawed free was tightly grasped in her hand. She barely noticed it was there as she struggled for air. Despite the fire in her lungs and the cramp forming in her side, Ada raced off into the darkness, panting hard as she ran. Several times she stopped for a few seconds to catch her breath, lean against a tree, or search for a spot to hide. Each and every time, the smallest noise would send her back into a blind panic and on a wild run through the trees. After what seemed like an hour, Ada dropped to her knees behind a tree and wept. Finally, she had caught her breath and felt as though she could move at a faster pace, but she needed to compose herself. Tears rolled down her face. Ada pressed her forehead against the tree, bracing herself. She listened for any sound in the distance of the man following her, but heard nothing. She wished she had smashed his head with the rock until his brains had splashed out over the forest floor. Everything had happened too fast. There was no time to think, only react. At that moment, she realized she was still holding the rock. She readied herself to drop it, but then thought better of it. Having any sort of weapon could prove useful. She leaned back and pulled the object up to her eye level, only to realize something amazing. This was no rock. Caked in dirt, grass, and a little bit of mud was something she could never have expected to pull free from the ground at her moment of absolute necessity. Ada stared at the object in her hand, wondering if it had been sent to her from the heavens in her time of need. Like Arthur finding the Lady of the Lake, who offered him Excalibur. This item was her Excalibur. Laying in her dirt-encrusted palm was a revolver. And that's where I'll end.
Thank you so much. That was one. All these readings have been wonderful. And if they don't make you want to read the book, I don't know what does. Evan, you've got a lot of comments in the chat box you might want to check out as I move you away. Now, I am the last reader, but it's awkward for me to introduce myself, so I'm going to get a little help on the stage. Wilfred
Hey
Hughes,
again,
go ahead.
everybody. Just want to introduce our leader of this reading, Elaine Pascal, aka the godmother of horror, is the author of The Bloodlights. If nothing else, Eve, We've Enjoyed the Fruit, The Kitchen Witches, The Language of Crows, and The Solstice. She has had stories published in over 24 magazines and anthologies. She is the editor of Darkness Most Foul and the co-editor of Dancing in the Shadows, a tribute to Anne Rice. She is a regular contributor to Pen of the Damned and the Ladies of Horror Picture Prompt Challenge. She is a co-chair of the Florida chapter of HWA, Horror Writers Association, and also a voiceover actress. Elaine enjoys chocolate, a robust full moon, reading spam emails, and paddleboarding. I love it.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. And of course, right now, as I'm reading, the sun is coming in and making a weird pattern on my face, but whatever. The show must go on. So I'm kind of starting close to like the third act of my novella, where we are at this point. Naomi and her husband are trapped in a hurricane. She has been caught in an MLM scheme selling supplements meant to assuage the symptoms of perimenopause from which she suffers. Her husband's been acting really strangely, and people have been disappearing around storms. And yes, I have lived through hurricanes, so the descriptions of the destruction is from memory. Brad, who had taken to pacing 30 minutes prior, announced, "I'm putting the tarp up." Now, Naomi could see only water from their window. "It's too dangerous. The roof isn't even leaking. We need to protect it." "That's not what a tarp's for." He wasn't listening, but was pulling on his galoshes and rain gear, which would do little against the rising floodwater. "The rain stopped, but the water's still rising. Where are you going to put a ladder? Please, we can wait until tomorrow." "I'm not having the stars fall on our heads while we sleep." He turned and smiled, and his smile was so boyish that she remembered falling in love with him for the first time. Since then, the years have been a series of falling in and out of love. She returned his smile. "My dad used to say that when I was little." Brad nodded. "It's an island thing. Besides," he pointed across the street, "she's got hers up already." Naomi couldn't argue that. The neighbor whose grass was always short and even, despite never seeing her mow, whose Christmas decorations rivaled the Macy's window, and whose barbecue always smelled like it was prepared by a Michelin chef, had a tarp securely fastened to the roof of her house. There was no explanation for how she managed to scurry up 12 feet of wet concrete without being noticed. She beat me again. "I thought we were ignoring the neighbors." "You," he chucked a finger under her chin as he headed to the garage, "you are ignoring the neighbors." Having him touch her after days of seeming to avoid her bolstered Naomi's spirits. "Should I come hold the ladder?" she called, heading toward the garage to see him hoisting a ladder through a window. She frowned. "I think that's the universe telling you to wait." "Can't get that automatic door open. Even if I did, the water would pour on in here and soak your precious boxes." The mention of her inventory shook some of the storm-related shock from her brain. She looked at her containers and silently counted them. "One's missing." He was focused on finding flat earth to stand the ladder upon. "A box. One of the boxes is missing." "Maybe it's still in the car," meaning beneath the tree that smashed into the car. Her heart picked up speed again. She went into the house to try to tally the number of bottles that had been in that box. She had a spreadsheet for inventory, but she didn't want to waste the battery on her laptop. She looked out the back window. It was dark, even though they were still an hour or so before sunset. Against the navy backdrop of the dark water and sky, she saw one of her containers. After confirming that Brad was consumed with his tarp work at the front of the house, Naomi struggled with the back door. The rain had caused it to swell, and it stubbornly clung to the frame. Once she was able to wrench the door open, she stepped onto what had been their lanai. The steel beams had collapsed, and the screens had been blown away. The water was up to her hips, and her trek toward the container was impeded by downed tree limbs and blown out shingles, shutters, and window frames that created submerged stumbling blocks. She did not want to fall into the filthy water, and she tried to push the thought of live down wires out of her mind. She kept one eye on the plastic container that appeared to be caught on a pile of detritus. It was unusual to encounter alligators in the brackish water on the bayside, but it would not have been impossible for a toothy reptile to have been waylaid by the storm. Each step meant placing her foot into the unknown, yet she stubbornly pursued the container. She prayed the majority of the inventory could be salvaged. A dead raccoon floated past her, and she felt herself tearing up, not for the dead mammal she had never met, but for the predicament she now found herself in. She could not retreat to the false comfort of financial support from FEMA and insurance. She had been down both paths before, and they were dead ends. Finances had already put a strain on her marriage. She feared the damage from this storm would be the breaking point. That thought breached the dam that held back her tears. She wanted to scream, but she was still close enough for Brad to hear. There was no need to endanger him by making him believe she needed to be rescued. She looked back, seeing the tarp unfurl down the rear of the house, waiting to be secured to the roof. She saw the image of a bird, just like the one that had been given to her grandmother. She found it remarkable that that brand was still around and wondered when Brad had purchased it, as she was usually in charge of disaster supplies. The box was nearly within reach when Naomi's foot came down on a slippery rock and her ankle twisted, bringing her to her knees. She swallowed water as she gasped in shock and pain. Why, she choked, looking to the sky, which was beginning to show a spectacle of stars. She had forgotten that the universe presented the most glorious starry nights following the most devastating storms. It was like a reward for withstanding the worst that nature could deliver. The stars reminded her that Brad would finish installing his star catcher soon and look for her. She pulled herself up onto her good foot and tentatively placed the injured ankle on the muddy floor of the hurricane-crafted lake in her yard. The pain caused her to grimace, but she bit her lip and propelled forward, gaining on the plastic container that appeared even more devious now that it had caused her both physical and economic harm. She leaned forward and grabbed the box by the handles, realizing that she now had to cover the terrain back to the house. She would be forced to be honest with Brad. There was no way to mask her wet clothing or the smell that was now embedded in her skin and hair. And a shower still days away, maybe even a week or so, she reminded herself, sinking into pity. Once the container was freed from the jetson, it moved easily, floating atop the water. Naomi knew that boxes of cereals within would have provided additional weight. She paused to lift the lid and peer inside. She prayed she would see her inventory intact, but her prayers were ignored. Instead, she saw an old book wrapped in yards of cellophane and a smaller box locked with a padlock. She looked back to the roof to see if Brad was finished. The tarp was gone. Oh, shit, she whispered. That was not a good sign. She had to get back. She pulled the container along with her, planning to examine it later. She bounced along tediously, floating more than walking to avoid putting too much weight on her ankle. It felt as if it took 3 times as long to return to the house as it did to retrieve the container, and she cursed herself for her impulsivity. Brad, she called as she carried the container through the back door. I know I shouldn't go out. I just saw some of my stuff, what I thought was my box. There was no one in the living room. She checked the bedroom and the bathroom. No sign of Brad. She went to the garage and peeked out the window Brad had used as an exit. The ladder was no longer there. She ran for the front door, fearing he had gotten disoriented in the storm, only to find that reality was worse than her fears. Brad lay on their porch, wrapped in the tarp. And I'm going to stop there, and I am going to invite everybody back onto the stage for one last hurrah. And you can, I'm trying to unmute you, you can unmute yourselves. What I was hoping that we could do is I could just go around and ask you if there's anything else you would like to plug. I'm going to go backwards this time. So, Evan, we're going to start with you. Evan Bond, anything upcoming you would like to give a plug?
Sure, yeah. So
Hello.
I am currently editing, or actually almost done editing, a vampire novel called Survive the Light. It's kind of backwards. It's man is the real monster in this book. So
I can't hear, babe.
Wow. That sounds really good. Marie,
I'm not
anything
lying,
you,
I can't hear.
in your intro, it said
What am I
you're
doing
working
now?
on things. Is there anything you'd like to plug or mention?
I I don't really have anything like immediately like, oh, this is going to be out in the next few months or anything like that. But I've been very, very hard at work on a couple different, more weird fiction type stories, more on the cosmic horror side of things, with some sci-fi elements. Very excited to get those out there. But for the time being, I'm just hard at work.
Oh, well, we wish you luck with those. We're excited to read them when they're ready.
Thank
NJ,
you.
what about you?
I got a couple things I'd like to chat about. So, obviously, check out the podcast I co host, which is the Scream Kings podcast, where myself, Nathaniel J. Darkish, and Max George delve into the horror genre through film, literature, folklore, the occult. And we also have authors, filmmakers, more. And we just got picked up by a network. So, we're with the Spark Podcast Network. So, yay.
Yay.
Yeah. It being June, it being Pride Month, I recommend that you guys check out my lesbian cannibal novella, Eat Your Heart Out, which came out with Black Hair Press. It came out in March, and it follows the toxic relationship of two first-year medical students. And as you can imagine, cannibalism is a metaphor for love. Problematic, whatever. May 26th, I had my short story collection come out, which was Time of Death, a collection of medical horror. And that's with Winding Road stories. And it's got zombies, it's got ghosts, werewolves, splatterpunk, scary nuns, flash fiction, rebels, and more. And last but not least, my Scream Kings co-host, Nathaniel J. Darkish, and I are co-writing Tapeworms with Whisper House Press. And it takes place in 1997, leaning heavily into the nostalgia of a better age. And it follows video castle workers who discover a series of horrible found footage tapes in their return bin, launching them into a mystery of wormy proportions. And kind of the comps would be like The Thing and The Faculty. So check those out.
Sounds great.
That's
Thank
a lot.
you.
A lot.
Awesome. DA, what about you? Do you have anything you would like to plug?
I'm working on a book with Walford. Can you guys hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what's going on, but working on a book with Walford called Horror on Vacation. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, that sounds like a good one. We'll look forward to that. Wilford, what about you? Do you have anything?
Echoing DA, yeah, Horror on Vacation. We're also working on a collection of novellas, All Hallows Feast, where he and I are contributing to it with 4 other writers. I'm still working on Fatal Potions, my collection of short stories. It's like a sister compendium to Lethal Doses. MJ liked that one.
It's good. It's good.
You'll like the new stories coming your way. It's sort of the same brand, short to the longer novella at the end. Also, a psychological thriller, Becoming Allie Winter. I've been working on that for a little while, but I'm getting closer, day by day, month by month. So, sometime soon.
All right.
I think that's the main ones right now.
Wonderful. So I'll do mine. Y'all know you can catch me with the Ladies of Horror and Pen of the Damned, and I do have some other stuff coming up. But what I want to plug, because I thought this was fun, and I'd like to see more people playing along, is I'm doing a passport game on my YouTube channel. If you watch, I do top 10 horror movies from different countries. And if you watch and give me, and I put little keywords, I embed little sneaky keywords in there. And if you watch and give me keywords from 3 different countries, I'll send you some books. So I like to see people playing along and have a little fun. I want to have some fun. So
awesome.
But I want to thank
good.
everyone so much for being here tonight. We are, heading over the hour, so I would like to wrap us up. Please remember your godmother loves you. Remember that I want you to chase your dreams and take your swings. But more than that, I want you to be kind to yourself because you deserve kindness. And we're going to lead on out here.